fascists. You'd be so much more convincing if you didn't go to extremes all the time. All ANCAPs are fascists. It's not an extreme. I sincerely believe that. I genuinely...
This is such a stupid opinion because anarcho-capitalism and fascism are like polar opposites. Fascists want the state to have total dominion over society. ANCAPs want to abolish the state and just have markets. These things could not be further apart.
Like...
But in the leftist brain, if you dislike something, it's fascism.
Right libertarianism, which ANCAPs are they're just fascist. Like look at all of their communities, like everywhere, all the time. This isn't like some like, you know, niche
What's sticking out of his ear?
political lefty take or whatever. There's an overwhelming overlap between right libertarians, especially ANCAPs, because they're very right, very libertarians.
Hell yeah, we are.
Yeah, have you not played BioShock? That's what it was all about. How anarcho-capitalist ideology led to fascism as the most powerful corporations consolidated to use the elements of the state to protect their profits. Like, yeah.
So here we have at least the beginning of a coherent critique. And there's a legitimate problem with established business interests lobbying the state for special favors. But really what's going on here is you have the Marxist view that in capitalism, companies just get powerful and powerful and fewer owners, and you end up with these ultra powerful corporations, which it's not really true. It is true that big business does come to dominate capitalist economy. And this is because of economies of scale. And basically, big business can just do a better job than small business. This isn't a problem. It means that consumers get lower prices. And people can work in these businesses too. But the fundamental error in their analysis is their belief in something called economic power, which doesn't exist. So, no matter how big a corporation comes, it is ultimately dependent on its consumers. If the consumers stop buying whatever the corporation is selling, then the corporation has no money, no power, and it just collapses. In fact, it would be go bankrupt, and then the constituent parts would be auctioned off and purchased by other corporations. You know, it's true that established business interests can lobby the state for special privileges, but that problem is easily solved by fighting the state, eliminating the state, or at the very least, deneutering it. Neutering it, declawing, eliminating its power to grant these special privileges in the first place. Yes, government is a big problem. That's what we've been saying the whole time. That's why we want a free market economy where the state's not picking winners and losers, where it doesn't subsidize companies, but instead companies just compete on their own merits. And no, BioShock or whatever video game you're playing this week is not an accurate description of the course of history. Read a fucking book.
Well, it doesn't really matter because ANCAP isn't a real political ideology. Fascism is. Excuse me. Fascism is, you know. It's a bad one, but it's a real political ideology that can and has existed. Fascism is a thing that has happened, you know. Anarcho-capitalism hasn't. And it won't. I think you're wrong on that, Vaush, buddy. What'd I do? Wrong on what? Radical.
And why, pray tell, can anarcho-capitalism not happen? Because Vaush said so. There's nothing there. There's no substance. There's no argument. It's just an Ipsy-Dixit pronouncement from Vaush.
Explaining why this is through the lens of Ayn Rand. Yeah, I'm literally in that video. Guys, here, okay, so can we talk about anarcho-capitalism and why it's not real and also why it's fascism? Okay, it's very, very simple, okay? If you take a look at anarcho-capitalist groups online, you're going to see a diverse range of people in terms of their positions on political progressivism, but most of them tend to be kind of like reactionary politically, you know?
I don't think anarcho-capitalist communities online, for example, /r/anarcho-capitalism, are a good representative sample of the movement. The vast majority of the people that participate in those forums are not anarcho-capitalists. Maybe some of them are interested in anarcho-capitalism, or they're just sick of the leftist hive mind that infests every other community, so they seek a refuge where people have at least somewhat of the same opinion on some subjects as them. Yes, a lot of the people that post in these communities are disaffected Republicans, white nationalists, and other non-anarcho-capitalist groups. But that's got nothing to do with anarcho-capitalism or what anarcho-capitalists believe.
Like, there's a reason why when Jo Jorgensen, the Libertarian Party candidate for 2020, announced her support of Black Lives Matter, it was met with, like, pretty negative results from the...
There was a negative reaction from a substantial amount of the people that comment in these groups, yes. And I don't know why vaush thinks we're going to kowtow to leftist organizations. I mean, Black Lives Matter was a communist protest organization. Of course, we're going to oppose it. We oppose communism. These guys were setting fire to communities, terrorizing innocent civilians, and realistically, black people get killed at twice the rate of white people by police because they're arrested at twice the rate. You know, are they arrested because of systemic racism or because they commit more crimes? Who's to say? I mean, you look at the George Floyd killing, and he was high on fentanyl and meth and fighting with the police. Yeah, they're going to detain you if you do that. So while there may be issues, legitimate issues of systemic racism in the United States, the Black Lives Matter protests were co-opted or perhaps a Marxist plot the whole time. And yeah, it was shameful for Jo Jorgensen to kowtow before them. Her whole campaign was a failure because she's not a principled libertarian. She's a leftist in libertarian clothing.
Like, literally, Black Lives Matter was about addressing police violence. Police are literally the...
Really? That's why they burned all the towns down?
...violent wing of the state. The idea of libertarians taking issue with the...
Now let's step back a second, because what the police really do is they arrest criminals. They stop crime. Yes, they use force to do it, but bringing criminals to justice is a good thing. So to the degree that the state are bringing criminals to justice for invading other people's property rights, there's nothing wrong with that. That would happen in an anarcho-capitalist society. And that's a big difference between libertarian socialists who don't believe in police or law or anything, and anarcho-capitalists who, yes, we oppose the state, but we still want to have police. We still think criminals should be brought to justice and made to answer for their crimes. Now, there are issues with police abuse, systemic issues, because they do have this judicial immunity. They can commit a crime in the name of being a cop, and they're not brought to justice for it. It happens all the time. So there are reforms that need to be made. But at the same time, most police, like most people, are good people. They're just out there doing their job, trying to protect the community, and I don't think that they need to be attacked or spat upon for doing their job. I mean, it's important to understand that while the state is the largest criminal organization in society, there's a lot of private criminals too. And fundamentally, libertarianism is about justice. Anarcho-capitalism is about justice.
Political movement based around critiquing the state is unbelievable. But that's what happened. Because a lot of libertarians are just weed-loving Republicans, you know? Being a Republican.
Well, what is it, Vash? Are we fascists? Or are we conservative sock dems that like to smoke weed? Get your story straight.
Cool. Except for now, because now like the MAGA movement has like appeal for young people. So maybe libertarianism's on the downswing because there is a cool avenue for Republican voters. But yeah, when you take a look at like the tendencies here, you know, you have to think about what fascism really is and what fascism really looks like. You know what I mean? The simplest economic definition of fascism is like the collaboration of the state and the corporate body, which is exactly what would happen.
If you look at, say, Mussolini's fascism, for example, it's not accurate to say that was collaboration between the state and the corporate body. It was more domination of the corporate body by the state. So, so yes, the means of production could be privately owned in name, but the state is going to set quotas. It's going to tell you what you're going to produce, how much you're going to produce. It's going to take the profits in the form of taxation. And if any businessman tries to rebuke the party or the El Duce, then they're going to come in. They're going to kick you off the ownership of the company, and they're going to put high-ranking party officials in power. So the reality is, under a fascist system, the state controls everything, just like under a socialist system. The real fascists are the socialists. There's very little difference between national socialism and international socialism, between Mussolini and Hitler, and between the Bolsheviks. It's all collectivism. It's all totalitarian, authoritarian regimes where the state dominates society.
Society, because the strongest corporation would immediately just take the role of the state. Why wouldn't they? Why would they not?
Why would they not? Well, what is the state? Okay, so the state is an organization with a monopoly on violence. So this company could try to start taxing people. That's what it would mean to be a state. They would say, okay, everybody in this country has to give us $500 a month. We're the state now. And then everyone would say, oh, fuck you. And nobody would buy their products, and they would completely lose out. They would have no revenue stream, right? And they'd be massively outnumbered by everybody else, because however rich the richest company is, the most powerful company, it's a tiny fraction of the economy as a whole. Bezos might have $50 billion, okay? But the economy of the United States is 25 trillion, to say nothing of the wealth, okay? That's what's being produced or whatever. That's the GDP.
Or to protect their own property rights.
So why wouldn't the richest company just become a state? Well, it's not that easy, especially if you're in a stateless society, right? Because it's one thing, you know, to take over an existing state, but if we are in an anarcho-capitalist society, if we've abolished the state, okay, that means that generally people are hostile to the state. So it's pretty difficult to establish a new one if the people are hostile to it. Every ruling elite relies upon the consent of the governed. Whether it's in a democracy or a dictatorship, the ruling elite is always a tiny fraction of the population. So the people have to at least tacitly accept your rule, which is why there's so much effort put into propaganda. So it's not so easy as this company just says, oh, we're the state now, because when they tried to collect their taxes, they would be met with hostility. People just wouldn't pay. And if they tried to use force, they would be met with overwhelming force and response. What's more, as rich as they are, they're still not going to be able to hire anybody to basically conquer society, because when you're signing up for that, you're forfeiting your life. It's a suicide mission, so the cost would be prohibitive. I mean, you would have to pay people an ungodly amount of money to take that risk, if they'd even do it at all.
Say, for example, a dispute resolution,
Spit it out, Junior. Organization. The word is organization.
system, which effectively operates as like a court system. Why would they not just buy up company towns, you know?
And again, here, Vaush is making the mistake of thinking because there would be elements of what the state does, there would be courts, there would be dispute resolution organizations, there would be firms that adjudicate disputes between organizations, there would be police, there would be roads, but there wouldn't be an organization with a coercive monopoly on aggression. There wouldn't be taxation, there wouldn't be state monopolies.
Undeniably, like, you know, a gateway to authoritarianism. But I think it goes further than that too, because fascism usually revolves around like the sort of ethnically centric revitalization of a national mythos. And I think ancaps talk about that a lot too. You don't have to look very far.
So this is true. Ancaps do idolize yesteryear, especially in America, but this is because the Gilded Ages, for example, the late 19th century, we had laissez-faire. We had our ideal system of government was in place. So it'd be like if the 19th century in America was a socialist, whatever, utopia, then of course socialists would look fondly upon that period of time. So yes, libertarians look fondly upon the late 19th century because we had a libertarian system of government, laissez-faire, limited government. Federal government spending was like 3% of GDP. So it was very limited government. It was basically, we had the gold standard. There was no regulations. It was basically the whole libertarian system in place, which is why we sort of reminisce fondly for it because we're libertarians.
To find people who are, talking about Western ingenuity as a kind of dog whistle. And in fact, the foremother of anarcho-capitalism, Ayn Rand, talked about like wealthy job creators the same way Nazis talk about like their Aryan forefathers. Have you guys ever actually read Ayn Rand? In Ayn Rand novels, like the well-to-do, like, job-creating business lords, they're not just smart people. They're existentially superior to other human beings. Can people back me up on this?
It's been a long time since I've read Rand, but yeah, I think that's true. Basically, she was trying to express her vision of virtue. So, yes, the heroes are virtuous, and the villains are evil. Typically how it goes in fiction. I guess, no, you can have more nuanced takes.
Story is like cringy fanfic where like every business magnate is like a Mary Sue, it's like they're never like flawed people. And the argument in the books isn't just that they're better than you, though that is part of the argument. The argument is that they're better than you.
No, the argument is these are good qualities.
The fact that they are better than you means you should stay the fuck out of their way. That they are better humans, and that means they should be given deference to do what they will. And
but that's the whole point of Rand's philosophy, is that so long as you're not using coercion or fraud or force against somebody else, you should be free to do as you will with your property.
It is not a tremendous surprise when you look at a lot of libertarian far-right circles and you'll see Nazi imagery combined with libertarian imagery. Because for them, libertarian...
Yeah, I don't think so. I mean, libertarians, we try to distance ourselves from Nazis whenever we can. Sometimes they sort of chase after us.
Libertarianism is nothing but an economic framework to describe the perceived intellectual superiority of the Aryan race.
Yeah, it's just nonsense psychobabble.
They believe that when they read Ayn Rand and its stories of innate human superiority and societies cultivated to give way to those innately superior people, what do you think they think? Do you think they think, yes, Jewish and black entrepreneurs are very valuable and must be protected? No, of course not. Any system which prioritizes...
You know, the left is so obsessed with race. This has nothing to do with race, but everything has to be viewed through that lens because they have no original ideas and they can't compete on the merit of their philosophy. So ultimately, it just comes down to calling names. You're fascist, you're racist, because they have no actual arguments.
This is hierarchy and intrinsic supremacy is going to be a magnate for fascism.